Mm. All right, we're good. Okay, let me start that again. Blobfish for the win. I just made blobfish preach.
If you're offended by the word don't read my book.
Welcome to the Apostate Sisters interview series, where we hold space for those who've walked away from their faith and are living beyond it. Today, we're speaking with someone in the atheist community who is very near and dear to my heart. We're going to be talking with Anna Siduri, the author of a book called Vellakari. Author Anna Siduri was in the jungles of India for the first year of the pandemic. Surrounded by the Tamil language, she put her effort into writing this book, her very first novel. Today, she sees her writing of this book as a big part of her healing process, to take her creativity and to put it into something so autobiographical and yet fictional. But there is a little something I didn't tell you about Anna Siduri. Anna Siduri is a pen name, and you might recognize who she actually is. Let's meet Anna Siduri. Hi!
Hey, how's it going?
Well, you're not Anna.
I am, actually.
Hi, Nancy. How are you?
I'm good, Pats. Thanks for having me on for my alter ego over here.
So you wrote a book. You were stuck in India for a year. You couldn't leave the country when the pandemic started. So you put all of your time and energy into this.
If you haven't read the book, here's your spoiler alert. We're going to be talking about a lot of events and characters from the book. Also, trigger warning for anyone who needs it. I do talk about some tough subjects in this book. I touch on sexual assault, misogyny, things that happen to women in the military, war, acts of terrorism. But on the plus side, there's some steamy sex scenes in there that I hope people will enjoy. The book, Vellakari, I wrote is something that I have brought up on our channel before. I have not gone in depth about it, though. I didn't think it really pertained to what we were discussing. And then as I thought about it more, I realized it actually has everything to do with it. Like, it's religious trauma coming out in an artistic way. And I wanted to discuss art therapy a little bit. We talk about things like autonomy and healing from our religious trauma on this channel. And art therapy is one really good way to do that. Even if someone thinks they aren't creative, I want to help support other people in their maybe like passion projects, whether it's writing a book, photography, dancing, creating music, creating films, or starting podcasts. Whatever passion the person has, I want to encourage them to do that, because you wouldn't believe the things that come out.
So yeah, Nancy, I mean, and you're not actually even the first author we've had on this channel for an interview. So we had Kara Reynolds, author of Priestess. She and I connected early on in this channel's life because she had written her book, and it's kind of a fantasy novel, but it's a similar themes, I guess it has, of like women becoming empowered and supporting each other and working through their religious trauma. So she got a lot of feedback on her book that people saw the like deconstruction and healing of religious trauma, those themes come through her book too. And that was such a point of connection between her and our channel. To recognize that. So I just love that you're here today to be the next in our author series. So we might have to make this a thing, bring in authors who've written books that are their healing process. I think it's beautiful.
Even if we don't think the religious trauma is there, it can come out in some pretty interesting ways. Like in Kara's book, her books is so fucking incredible. I read it, and as soon as I finished it, with tears in my eyes, I'm just sending her an email. I'm like, I know we haven't officially met yet, but oh my fucking goddess, your book was incredible. And I just told her all the wonderful parts about it. And I think we need to encourage each other, because
Yes.
for all artists out there, yeah, they need the feedback for their work, because I think that's the most important part, is people just knowing that, hey, their work made a difference in someone's lives. That is like
Hmm.
so impactful. Oh my gosh. Author David Fitzgerald, we just interviewed him. He's the author of Playing God and a number of other books. He also is an author of several titles in the erotica theme. His name is Kilpatrick. And Under the Kilt is one of those books, which I still have yet to read. I need to, but he's been very kind in actually reading my book, Vellakari, and giving me, feedback. And he knows a lot about Indian culture, which is a big theme of my book as well. So it's nice to have that interaction. And thank you to you as well, Pats, because you were reading some of my book. I was sending you little bits here and there as it started to take shape. And I realized, oh shit, I am actually writing a novel here without actually meaning to. And you were helping me, giving me feedback and all that. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I love that you kind of just started this as a little passion project while you were apparently trapped in the pandemic in India. You were an English speaker in a country where people do speak English, but I just can't imagine what it was like to be the only person around that didn't understand the Tamil also. And I felt like that must have really inspired something about your book, that like your brain was just like craving the English language so much or something that like that all worked for you. I don't know, it's really beautiful. I loved during that time getting to see like you would take walks every morning and evening with your husband, and I knew in between that you would be working away on your computer writing your book.
Mhm.
It's
Yes.
really beautiful.
The opportunity that presented itself was incredible. Actually, I don't think I would have written this. Well, I didn't set out to write a book to begin with. I guess the thought had never crossed my mind, but as I've said before, I think I had so much bullshit in my head that just needed to get out. Religious trauma, and even though it's very subtle in this book, it comes out in very strong ways, at least from my perspective. Because I'm reading through it and I'm realizing, oh, holy shit, I know exactly where this came from and how it came out that way. And I had no idea how I was going to do that and somehow turn it into like an interesting story that someone from an outside perspective can actually get something out of it. But somehow it ended up working. It began because, well, COVID hit. Just before that, my husband, who is from India, he was born in South India and lived there most of his life. He's been in the US, I'd say a good 15 years or so now. Well, this would have been my third trip to India, right? He and I had just closed our Indian restaurant. We did own an Indian fusion restaurant in Madison, Wisconsin for a number of years. And we just got to the point where we couldn't handle it anymore. All we were doing was working. I'd say I was putting in a good 90 hours a week. I was exhausted. I had just left my corporate job up in Minneapolis prior to that. And then all of a sudden, my new husband wants to open up a restaurant, and it was just a whirlwind. It was exhausting. But I learned a lot about Indian culture. Before that, I thought I knew something about it. I didn't, not until I married someone from the culture and owned a restaurant. But let me tell you, skipping forward a bit, we had shut that down and we went to India in December of 2019. And I know you're familiar with that time period because you and your family were also in India at that point, and you came for what, 3 weeks, was it? Uh,
Yeah, that was quite the adventure for our family.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was such a great experience for your daughters too, to be in a place like India, and not just India. I mean, a lot of people, if they travel that far, like say you're coming from the US to India, they'll likely go to North India, places like, New Delhi, and go check out the capital, go see the Taj Mahal over in Agra. Maybe they'll go to Rajasthan. No, this was rural South India where we were in like the heart of the Nilgiris Mountains, the gateway to that area in the middle of a tiger reserve, a beautiful place in the jungle. And I like to refer to my husband as Mowgli from Jungle Book, because that's kind of how he was raised.
His stories sound just like it. I mean, he talks about having to run down a hill to get away from an elephant. Yikes.
Oh yeah, that actually that happened to us as well when
Oh
we
my
were there
gosh.
this last time. But I haven't been back since. But obviously, I didn't intend to stay in India for a year. You guys were visiting there, and I think you left the country right when COVID was kicking off over there in China. Like it
Well,
had
we
literally just started.
so we got home New Year's Eve of 2020 coming in, and
Mm.
it was that night or that day that the World Health Organization announced a novel coronavirus. So like literally we finished a trip that took us in a circle around the globe because we went across, well, we went like across to, across Russia to India. So we went
Mm.
that away. But then instead of coming back, we kept going and stayed in France for a few hours and then made it around. So we like had managed to create for ourselves this trip where we did a circle around the globe. And the day we got back,
Mm.
it was like global pandemic. I
Yep.
mean, what the heck? What a wild time.
It really was. And I'm so happy you guys got to go to India. I mean, I feel like that was kind of, it changed a lot of lives. And I'm definitely not trying to take away the horror of that time either. A lot of people lost their lives because of this. I also feel like a lot of creativity came out during this time period. People either they just had much less time to go to work at maybe a job they didn't like, and they found that creative side. Like I said, in art therapy, all of a sudden they were tapping into things that they wanted to do because they had so much free time to like be stuck indoors, and they began projects, especially online.
You're right.
And for me, that was writing a book. So we intended to stay 1 month, and that turned into 1 year because of COVID. We kept booking flights out and they kept getting canceled. We just couldn't find a way out, and India had laws too where we couldn't be out in town, at least not for most of the week. And so I was cooped up inside. My husband was busy working on, his properties out there. We also own a couple shops, houses, and like a tea plantation. And I had a mother-in-law that I couldn't really communicate well with. I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. And surrounded by all these Tamil speakers, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put my thoughts down. I'm going to get into writing, see where it goes. I kind of started it as like journaling. You and I have talked about journaling and just kind of information dumping, just getting the bullshit out. Well, I guess I had this idea in my head for years about how to start a book, but you know how it goes. We always put off our creative side due to maybe no time, no money, whatever the excuse is. I had no excuse not to do something like this with all that time I had. And so I started writing, and people are probably wondering why it's listed as Anna Siduri, and that is actually my pen name. I Part of the reason I did that was I thought, well, people are never going to be able to like pronounce, let alone spell my last name of Vishwanathan. In South India, it's a very common last name, my married name. But I thought, it might be fun to have a bit of an alter ego. So let's get a pen name in here. And so I came up with the name Anna because Anne is my middle name. And Siduri, which actually I've heard it's pronounced Shiduri, is a character from the old Epic of Gilgamesh. And she made wine, and she was an ale brewer. So like she brewed beer. And there were some cases where she was even referred to as like a goddess. And I thought, ooh, a wine goddess. That's kind of fun. And kind of
That's kind of perfect.
a wine goddess. I'm like, let's just fucking go for it. So I changed the name. I thought, let's keep this separate from the rest of my existence here, because I didn't know how this book was going to turn out. All right. And I just wanted to bring attention to the cover here, Pats, because you created that. And you did a fantastic job. I think it looks I think it looks great. I guess what I wanted to do with it was,
I have my copy too.
yeah, there's yay.
Oh, wait though. We need to talk about this
What?
because I didn't come up with the idea for this cover.
Oh God.
I drew it. I did draw it. But insert image right here of Nancy's concept drawing because it was the concept for the cover was definitely your idea, and you did a sketch that gave me all the direction I needed.
It was a horrible sketch, but you managed to capture what I was going for.
Whatever, you conveyed the idea. And okay, You know what? We were talking about people like not feeling like they're creative or whatever, and how that kind of came out in the pandemic. Like, here's what you need to understand when it comes to designing things, you don't have to be like good at drawing or whatever. You
Mhm.
have to be able to communicate the idea, right? So I think so many people get stuck in the like, oh, but it has to be perfect. Like,
Right.
no, let it go. What is the easiest, fastest way you can communicate what it is you're trying to communicate? And
Mhm.
you doing a drawing with like, a picture of the man in the middle right here that looked kind of like a egg with a carrot off of its face, or off the side of it, like that's fine. It didn't matter because I understood
Yeah.
what I needed to do.
I
So
thought it was like an ostrich.
like I want people to be boldly and unapologetically
Yes.
creative. Like, don't judge yourself, just create and magic will happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to knock out something quickly. And you were asking for like that concept art so that you could get started on the cover. And that shit is what I put together for you that I still have, by the way, because it makes me laugh. So you just give it to Patty. Just it's that it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that does slow people down in the process or stops them completely to say, I'm not good enough to do this, and so I'm not going to do it. Like, so what if somebody doesn't like your art or your piece of music you make? What are they to you? And someone who cares about you is going to give feedback and help you either to say, I don't think this is for you, or here's the ways that you can do this better. But someone who's just criticizing you and be like, oh, this is a piece of shit, you suck, they can fuck all the way off. So what?
Well, yeah. And the thing is, I think we forget, like, we put so much focus on achievement.
Yep.
And that's probably an American thing, or not just American, but whatever. It's an idea we get in our head. And I think our focus on achievement and perfection of that end goal stops us from realizing the importance of the process,
Right.
right? Because who gives a shit what anyone thinks of your book in the end? Like, what I know is that for you, the process of writing it was healing as fuck,
Hmm.
right? And
Well,
it gave you space to step into your own life, I think, right? Because you
right.
told these stories that were mostly yours through kind of an outside lens, and it's like it kind of gave you a chance to see yourself and be like, oh damn, I'm kind of awesome, and like getting that for yourself and stepping into healthy, happy, whole human,
Hmm.
that's the fucking goal of the whole thing. So, like, I know you didn't necessarily believe in all the church stuff that we were taught growing up, but like,
At all.
the religious harm still happened. The repression of you being you still happened. And so, creative projects are a great way to step back into yourself.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Damn.
I think we need to just be encouraging the shit out of it. Art therapy is so beneficial. It's so beneficial. And the nice thing is, it's entirely yours. You don't have someone saying, like, oh, you can't do it this way. I mean, you might, but you can write or draw or paint things however the fuck you want to do it. Isn't that
Yep.
great? And I think that took me a while, even in the writing process, as I was writing this, Pat. You were giving me feedback saying, "Oh my god, your protagonist is such a badass chick." And I was like, that was a moment for me. I'm just like, "You're right. She absolutely fucking is. In fact, she's my alter ego. She's like everything that I wish I could be, Like she's so cool." Yes, I take elements of myself and place it into my protagonist. I think a lot of people do that. Um, and it's written in first person. But I that was a moment for me when I realized I'm like, I don't have to write this the way that I sometimes see myself or the way that I used to see myself or how others saw me. I'm like, why the fuck does my protagonist keep on apologizing for everything? Why does she keep
Mm.
blaming herself for everything going wrong? And I'm like, I'm going to put a stop to that right now. And I'm going to write this book however I think it should be. Yeah. Like that was a sense of incredible freedom that I don't think I had ever felt before when I was just putting my thoughts on paper. I'm like, holy shit. And Pat, I don't know where it was all coming from. I was like writing this down and then I would read back over it. I'm like, holy shit, I think this is kind of good. Like I didn't need to necessarily research anything. It came from up here. Yeah.
Well, it was your experiences and it was places you were familiar with already. And maybe it gave you the chance to like be real with yourself about how I really felt about it all.
Right. And I don't think we take the time to think about things like that
Mhm.
because we're too busy either trying to be what society is trying to make us become or thinking that no one cares about what we have to say. So I
So
remember
true.
even in
Wait,
work,
it's the I'm not good enough.
yes.
I have that with this podcast, with doing a YouTube channel. Like, why the heck would people listen to the crap that comes out of my mouth? You
Mhm.
know? Or like, am I doing it right? You know, like we second guess ourselves so much
Yeah. There
because we're
was a
taught to not trust ourselves. And I think that's
exactly.
really
Yes.
problematic for all of us. But it serves people who want to keep us down, who want to keep us serving them
Mhm.
if we
Yes.
don't trust ourselves.
We've gotta support others in their creative works as best as possible. I had this incredible moment when I was like just, cleaning the house last night and I was listening to some Lindsay Sterling, which she is an incredible violinist. If anyone has not checked out her content, like she feels like such a real person, someone you can connect with, someone who was told that she sucked or that she'd never be successful. At the end of one of her videos, she makes a statement saying, "Oh, you're not successful." And she's like, "You're right, I'm not successful yet." That's the way we should be talking to ourselves. So like, yeah, maybe you aren't successful yet, but
Well, isn't there a discussion to be had about what success actually means, though, too?
exactly.
Right? We live in a capitalistic society, so like success by, by, I don't know, it just sort of is required that success, at least in part, means money is being made off of it, right?
Right. Mhm.
So we know that that's a given, unfortunately, given the situation. But outside
Mhm.
of that, having to be there by necessity, what does success look like? Well, I mean, to me, healing shit for yourself, empowering the hell out of what you trust yourself to be able to do,
Mhm.
that seems like success. A completed book, like in I was gonna say in the flesh, a completed book, like
Oh, there's
made
flesh.
of paper, right? Made of paper, made of ones and zeros, doesn't matter, but like you made a book.
Yeah.
That's success. You set out to do something. Well, you didn't even really set out to do it, but you set out to seek yourself.
Yeah.
And what resulted was a novel.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I still squash it too. I'm just like, "Oh, yeah, I wrote one book. I don't even know it's any good." Just the excuses. We're like, "No, I
I
wrote a
know.
fucking book. This is me speaking my truth, and if somebody gets something out of it, then hey, score." It wasn't
Right.
just information dumping and trying to get religious trauma out. It's helping someone else out as well, and I think that's fucking awesome. You know?
This is also making me think of one of our subscribers, Eyes Open Heart Realigning.
Mhm, she's from
Yeah,
Scotland too.
she is from Scotland. You're right. So she has fairly recently come out of a lifestyle of faith and is really stepping into herself. And so she's writing lyrics and using AI to create just amazing songs out of that. And I see that same vibe, right? That you had going into this book, that like I need to create, I need to have my say. And so however people find to do that, I think is what we need more of.
Her and I have been talking about, yeah, her music here, so I've been encouraging her to stay on it. It's beautiful music, and it's helping her overcome her traumas as well. It's
Yeah.
incredible. And that's yeah, that's so funny because the protagonist in my book, I made her like this Scottish American, like her father had come over from Scotland. And I literally just did that because I had taken a trip to Scotland and I thought the country was really beautiful and it resonated with me so much. The protagonist, I named her Scaith Donegal. There's a story behind her name as well. Scaith is the name that I heard when we were on tour. I went there with the real life Becker character who adds humor in my book. we're friends with her in real life. But yeah, she went
Edgar.
with me and she just said, "Oh, that name's Scaith. That's a really cool name. I like that." And it turns out it was some woman from Scottish legend who was into martial arts, or like she taught martial arts. So we went to see the old castle ruins where she, I guess, lived. And so that's where that came from. And her last name, Donegal, there is actually a Donegal town in Scotland. And so there her name came up. So it's not that I have Scottish roots, it's just that I made my protagonist as such. She is this like beautiful young blonde woman. And here she is in the middle of the desert in the beginning of the book, just kind of looking around her surroundings in this just war-torn place near Baghdad, Iraq, is where I started the book. And she's just this gorgeous woman, but she's in uniform. There's trash floating around. There's crows and buildings all blown out. And she's just having this surreal moment. I liked the contrast of it. I spent 10 years in the military. I am now a disabled veteran. I did have an injury from a vehicle accident that caused me to get out of the military and could no longer be in service. But I am considered to be a disabled veteran now, and I do play on the injuries a little bit. So I do have a lot of pain in my body from that. But that was another thing dealing with, is that I plan to stay in the military until, basically end of term. I wanted to retire, but had to get out and change a few things. But in the beginning of the book, we see Scaith in the middle of this spot in Baghdad that I believe is still there. It's known as the Hands of Victory. When I was deployed to Iraq, I had taken a day trip by chopper into the city for a couple things. One of them was to obtain my passport because I was about to take my R&R. I was about to take my leave. And we had some spare time, so me and my supervisor at the time were just kind of wandering around this old park. He had been there before, and we're just kind of looking around, taking pictures, but still being cognizant of our surroundings. All right. Well, I was not maintaining my situational awareness at that point because I just had a surreal moment where I'm like, I am in the middle of the fucking cradle of civilization right now. Like, I had a moment that was kind of like my secular Garden of Eden. I see these enormous hands of victory towering over me, and I'm just kind of wandering away, just seeing what's here. And I think at that point I realized how much I wanted to go and explore the world, wanted to see what was out there. And so that's why I started the book the way that I did, where she's just standing here kind of forgetting her surroundings, and then she forgets that she's actually in a dangerous place and needs to keep her wits about her. And so a whirlwind from there, things transpire to where she almost gets shot in the beginning. So she has to go. Yes.
But you're saying that part wasn't your experience. So the danger in that scene was the fiction part, but you had a moment that was real.
Oh yeah,
With that scene.
There's a
Okay.
lot of fiction in this book. I mean, it is fiction. It's just that I'm using real events that kind of I found profound in my life. I mean, it has to be dramatized, of course, for for flow and for curiosity and for interest. But yeah, in that case, I did have someone local who was kind of approaching me a little aggressively, and I'm like, oh shit, I did kind of forget where I was. Here I am with a loaded M16, trained and ready to go, but I just wasn't ready in that moment. I'm like, oh shit, I'm losing my touch here because I'm just kind of falling in love with the world around me and forgetting the dangers at the same time. She nearly gets shot, and she's just kind of having a panicky moment of like, oh shit, what just happened? And she's actually more terrified about having to go back to base and explain to her commander that she fucked up. Yeah, I found it interesting that she was more worried about having to go back and face her superior, her commander in the military, because she made a mistake and she knew that she was going to get punished for it. But that's how the book kicks off. To kind of put a layout of the book, it starts in Iraq because I was deployed to Iraq in 08, 09. It was close to the tail end of when the US was kind of pulling its troops out, and I think I was one of the last ones to get out, actually. So I talked about my experiences there. And I know a lot of people did come to me saying that they didn't particularly like the part in the military because they thought I portrayed soldiers as being relatively unprofessional. And I had to tell them, be like, no, I'm writing it as it was actually.
Well, right. Like, if that's what you think, then maybe you
Yeah,
need to adjust that head of, or that vision you have in your head of like what it means to be a soldier, because they're all still people.
right. God, the weird thing about life is there's all these rules in place, and yet it's like nobody follows them. They follow it on paper, but behind closed doors, nobody follows these rules, Patty. I'm telling you. Um,
Isn't most stuff like that?
huh?
If you can get away with breaking the rule, you do. I don't know.
Exactly. And I'm not sitting here bad mouthing the military. Just like any organization, there are good aspects of it and bad
That's
aspects
fair.
of it. I'm just stating, what things were like for me over there and other people that I had deployed with, well, all throughout my military career, seeing,
Right.
say, someone very high up in rank taking advantage of that position by being misogynistic and sexually harassing, or even in a lot of cases, assaulting young female soldiers. It happens all the time in the military. And I wanted to draw attention to things like that because we see this across the board, people in power and not even just men taking advantage of their position. So I did want to capture that throughout the story as well. I think what I did is, again, I didn't think there was any religious trauma there. But as I was rereading it, what I did was I made my protagonist the daughter of a man who was kind of a strict Catholic. And that wasn't necessarily to pick on Catholics in a way. It just, at that point, I wasn't researching the Worldwide Church of God or Armstrong at that point because I just didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want to revisit it. I really had no interest in going back. And so I just switched it to Catholicism as her background. And instead
But
of,
I just gotta say, I think I understand why you did that though, because I don't think at that point it was all that clear, like how direct the link of the damage from the church is to the struggles as an adult, and I think our understanding of that has increased so much over the last 1 year of doing this project together, this channel. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think it's true and it's really valuable to recognize that now, how much your religious trauma did still affect, well, or does still affect you,
right. Hmm. And
even though it was somewhat unacknowledged by you at that point.
I had to change that. And in a way, I just kind of made her stronger than I felt I was at that point. And so she just kind of laughs off the idea of mass and going to church. She makes a joke of it. And in a way, I kind of do the same thing. I just kind of laugh it off. I'm like, this is fucking stupid. I don't want anything to do with this. So there is a flashback scene where Scaith goes to mass with her father. Like I said, he's pretty devout Catholic, and she's just kind of looking around at all the statues staring back at her. She's like, what the fuck, does anyone actually want to be here right now? I can't imagine anything more boring than this. And then she and then she's trying to hook her father up with a date, and she's going to write his phone number on a page because she intervenes. She's trying to get her father a date, and then she is such blasphemy, but she takes a Bible and she like rips a page out and just like, here, you got a pen? She writes the number.
I love it. We weren't
Oh,
even in this current headspace, and even then you're like, fuck
no.
you, Bible.
Well, that's what I did with her. I just wanted her to take a more like, this is stupid and I'm just gonna kind of laugh it off approach. But then I see a little bit of appreciation from her side once she gets to India, because there's also themes of Hindu and just Indian culture in general throughout the book. Now, she doesn't get to India until about the second half of the book. All right. So it's laid out where each chapter is in a different time period and a different continent. Like, she's all over the place, right? Not only that, but it's in first person from her perspective, and then I go and get first person perspective from her love interest. The person I modeled that off of is my current husband, Suman. His name is Aryan Visu in the book, which Visu is just a shortened version of our last name. What I wanted to do was have like a clash of cultures in a way to realize that, hey, humans can interact with themselves in these incredible ways, despite what your background is, despite what your religion is. We can find a way to communicate. And I think back when we were dating, I realized like I connect with this man so much better than anybody that like I've dated back in like my home country or country of birth, right? And I felt such a strong connection to the people of India. Not only that, but any place that I've
Wait,
traveled
wait.
to.
Scaith or you?
Both.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to get a little bit intertwined between the two. Is so similar to my own life. But yeah, I didn't necessarily want to confuse people that way, but I do take these characters, and there's a lot of characters, by the way, just because there's so many different countries where the story takes place. There's not really one genre that it falls into. I maybe I could say it's military history combined with world travel and adventure. There's a little bit of romance, a little bit of eroticism too, through some nice little scenes in there. And just about the differences between love and lust and just self-discovery. And there's all kinds of topics and genres in this book. And so I couldn't really pinpoint it. And so I once I actually had the whole book written down, I was like, oh, who do I even go to? I don't want to get an agent or anything official like that. I'm like, I kind of just want to do the traditional route and have this published. See, just to have kind of that validation to say, yeah, like you're a good enough writer that we're going to publish this for you. So I found Hellgate Press, who are actually in Oregon, and they published the title because they typically publish like military and adventure titles. And I was like, well, fucking sweet. That's like right up my alley. So let's see what I can do with that. And so I got really good feedback from Harley over there, the owner. He said that he was actually very surprised that I was a first time writer because of how well it was written. And I was like, fuck yeah, that's the validation I need. So
Yeah.
I kept making changes at that point, all these different drafts and everything. In hindsight, there's probably a lot I would have changed, but at the same time, I feel like it's like a journal, like it's just out. And let me tell you, Pats, I feel like that was just a lifetime of therapy coming out.
Like, obviously, if you do therapy, you're thinking about things throughout the week, but like, usually therapy's what, like once a week, once every other week for an hour? Like, you just don't cover that much ground with that,
Right.
and like going deep is something that maybe, like it kind of has to just be you or like a really like deeply connected person to be able to plumb the depths and really spend the hours considering. And I still just can't get over how interesting it is the way you have done this healing. Like, because you created Scaith as an alter ego, but clearly representing yourself, I find it so fascinating how you were able to kind of like see and pick apart her experiences and her reactions to that in a way that you probably couldn't as Nancy, because you're feeling all the feels as Nancy. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, as Anna, you're looking at Scaith and
No, I know.
yeah, it's kind of an incredible like little bit of a mind fuck, but it works, right? And I think there are therapies out there like inner child work, where you like go into a memory of your childhood and you like are standing there as an adult, watching the child you and interacting with the child you to give them what they needed in that moment, so it's like it's not the same thing, but I think it's hitting the same notes. So, like, this could be a thing, like a whole new therapeutic development of we're going to talk you through writing a book to therapy yourself.
Or anything in the art realm, yeah. But
Yes.
really writing is I think so helpful, so helpful.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was so fun to write too. I don't know why I felt like I had to follow a protocol, but eventually I got to the point where I was like, nope, I'm writing this for me. I had no intentions of publishing it, Pats, but as soon as I was done, I was like, I think I have a book here.
I love
Let's
that.
just get it published. Why not?
Well, so here's the thing. Now, since you didn't intend it as a book to start, maybe it doesn't have this piece, but typically a protagonist has kind of like their one great struggle or their one great um like like tragic thing about them, you know,
Mhm.
like their one great fault, you know, um that they have to overcome to
Right.
whatever. So if that exists in your book for Scaith, what is her like thing, you know, her great downfall, her great fault that she needs to like deal with and overcome to see her become herself by the end of the book?
Yeah, I think, and I hate to word it this way, is kind of like, oh, finding myself. I feel like it's so cliche to say, oh, she was having a hard time finding herself. I really, but I think it's in that realm of like her more or less not believing in herself. You know, she has this beautiful moment where she's in New Zealand because that's what she does. Her R&R, she's at a crossroads in her life, right? It's almost the end of not only her deployment, but almost the end of her military service, right? And she's needing to make a decision. Well, what do I want to do with life next? And that was that moment in Baghdad there where she's realizing, like, oh, I'm kind of loving this world. I've never been anywhere outside the US. And then here I'm in Iraq. I want to see more of it. I want to see more cultures. And so I don't know how to describe it. Like she doesn't believe that maybe she's worthy to be out there in the world. Like she's got like the box that you always talk about with religious trauma. Like society wants to keep you in a box. And getting back to like her moment that she has in New Zealand, because she spent 2 weeks in New Zealand, because I did. Yeah, there was that moment where I was at a waterfall and I had a tour guide. There was nobody else around. It was just serene, and I could have jumped in the water topless and just had pictures taken of me because he offered, this nice European man who was taking me around, and I put that in my book. The weird thing was, I told him no. I was too shy. I was too embarrassed. I didn't want to possibly be seen, and so I didn't do it. In my book, she did. Scaith did, and she had this incredible moment where she was like, "I am free. I'm a fucking water goddess, and out here, no one can touch me." Writing is like that safe space. Like, if we feel like we can't get it out verbally, just write it down because you can take all the time you need to get it out. And it was that moment there when she was in the water. She's just like, "I'm a fucking water goddess. No one can get to me here. Society cannot tell me I'm doing it wrong. I can do it however I want to." And I'm like, "Why am I ashamed?" And all throughout her little trip to New Zealand, she's just starting to discover parts of herself that, yes, she did hide away. Maybe that was the religious trauma, or maybe that was society telling her she wasn't good enough. But she does a similar thing when she meets these other tourists at her hostel, and they're like, "Why don't we go skinny dipping?" And she has this moment of like, "Oh no, I can't do that. No, no." But then she's like, "Why the fuck not? Go do it." And so she does that. She's just coming into her own during this trip. And so that's kind of the start of it. Now, obviously, I still have to get this character to India, right? How do I do that? So when I think it's no secret that there's a plane crash in my book. And she's about to leave New Zealand. She's saying goodbye to all the people that she met. She wants to stay longer. But either way, she feels like she's starting to change now. You can tell the toxicity of her world when she's in Iraq. And I think that's why so many people didn't particularly like that part. And I don't want people to think that that part is the way the entire book is. It's mostly about India and her relationship with the people there. Um, but you see that toxicity gradually go away. She needed to get herself away from Iraq and go enjoy herself in New Zealand for a little bit because her mind was just clouded. Here, she's just kind of losing her touch. She nearly gets shot. Not only that, she is also having a very toxic sexual relationship with like one of her superiors in the military, which of course chain of command and all that, that's a no-go. You could really fuck up your military career through that. And so I also touch on a little bit of her struggling with lusting after someone and the difference between that and falling in love with someone who is, you know, this guy that she meets in India. Okay, so we'll see that situation slowly fade off a little bit as she's kind of transitioning into this new world she's found herself in. All right. But either way, she has begun the healing process. She's on her way to Iraq. And yes, something happens where the plane does crash and she ends up in the jungles of India. And that is where the second half of the book begins and where she meets her love interest, Aryan Visu, who is, well, basically everything that she's not, right? I mentioned the similarities between the two. They have this great connection, but at the same time, like he's a very free person. I mean, he's got his own struggles as well, which I will get to, but they find compassion and connection within each other. Like I say in my book, like despite being from opposite sides of the world and their cultures, you couldn't get more opposite than somebody, some white American, and somebody who was born and raised in India, of all places, and the jungles, the rural India, very different. And so she needs to get back to Iraq. But the thing is, no one knows she's alive. She is legit, as far as she knows, the sole survivor of this plane crash because some tribal person from India saves her life from the wreckage. And that is how she gets introduced to this family and this man who's caring for her for a few days, helping her to get back to Iraq. But in the meantime, she's just exploring this culture. And this is also where, and I feel like I kind of relate to Kara Reynolds in her book when she talks about the difference between religious ideology and kind of more like spirituality in a way. I'm not even in the spiritual realm, not that I know what that exactly means anyway, but there's
You're such a good atheist, Nancy.
I don't know what it means. I'm not going to say I believe something when I have like no concrete evidence. So, but there's this ring, and actually it's right there on the cover there. You can see it. It was actually my wedding ring, which got stolen recently on my last trip to Istanbul. Boo. But this ring is a peacock. It's a very common symbol in India. Obviously, a peacock is the national bird of India. Yeah, and there's this god in India called Murugan, often depicted with a peacock. And so when Scaith gets to India, you know, the Hindu people around there are saying that this particular god saved you because you were wearing this ring from India with a peacock on it. And so, like, I'm not entirely opposed to something like that. I think that's, you know, kind of a cool concept.
Yeah.
And so, like I often tell people, I'm like, I don't believe what Hindus do, but I've never run into any problems with them. I've never had them try to preach to me or tell me I'm going to this terrible place because I don't believe what they believe. And so I wanted to play on that a little bit too, where Scaith she doesn't believe in this stuff, but she's fascinated by it because it's a religion that comes off much more beautiful than the one she was raised in. And so she finds herself in those mere few days that she's in India, just kind of falling in love with it, falling in love with the people. And I go into depth with my perceptions of India on it's been 3 trips that I've been there now. The last one was for a year. And so I got to experience different seasons. And
I mean, can we just say, I don't think that you've had 3 trips to India. I think that you lived in India for a year and you also had a couple of other trips before that.
True. Yeah.
I mean, you were there for a year. That's not a trip. You lived there for a year. I mean, yeah, it was unintentional because of COVID, but still, you freaking lived there.
Impromptu trip. Yes. But I really appreciated having all that time there to really get immersed into the culture. And I tried to capture that through Scaith's eyes so that other people could feel like maybe they were there. And I could reference little differences, kind of like in how people talk, how they act, maybe how the caste system works. You know, noticing that there are injustices across the globe as well. every place in the world is not necessarily better or worse. There's a lot of similarities and a lot of things that need to be improved as well. So I just yeah, anyone who hasn't been there and reads my book, they're going to get my perspective as a Vellakari. And here I am,
Wow.
like
Have
finally
we
addressing the word.
I know, I was like, wait a second. Did we even say what Vellakari means?
It
Go
means
for it.
it means white girl. Okay, so you actually picked up on the word pets. So it is a Tamil word, which by the way is that's mainly what my husband speaks is Tamil. His mother tongue is Kannada. He also speaks some Malayalam. He speaks Hindi. He speaks a lot of fucking languages. Holy shit. But
Yeah.
he's kind of right at the crossroads of like three different states down there in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka are I think the three they're very close to like where they come together and where his family is from. So Vellakari, yes, that's a Tamil word, and Tamil is one of the oldest languages out there in existence. A very beautiful language. I know a few words and phrases enough to impress the people of India. But when you and I were their pets, we kept getting called Vellakari everywhere we went. Even if we were in the car, we'd have kids running towards us, be like, Vellakari, Vellakari, selfie, mem, selfie. And so I thought it was a really beautiful word. There's no necessarily correct like spelling for it. So what is on the cover is kind of what I came up with. Because apparently if I say it a different way, it means like maid or servant, something like that. But Vellakari, yeah, either foreign girl or white girl. I mean, that's the locals getting so excited from seeing someone from, you know, Western culture. A lot of them had never seen a white person in their life. So it seemed the perfect word for the title because I played on that with the protagonist love interest Aryan. He keeps calling Scaith Vellakari, and that becomes her nickname. Thus, the rest was history.
So, did your husband start calling you Vellakari somewhere along the
I
way?
think he did for a short time. Yeah, he said just as a joke.
Is there any like stuff attached to that, you know, like to say Vellakari, is that kind of like saying, oh, just white girl, like it just means foreign girl? Or is it like saying cracker?
I don't think there's any negative connotations associated
Oh,
with
okay.
the word because kids use it and they get excited saying it just because they're yeah,
So
it's
interesting.
yeah. But I suppose if you've never seen like another particular culture except only in like movies, you start to look at these people like they are celebrities and movie stars, and you know this of all people. Like when you were there, how many people did we have coming up to us and just be like, Vellakari, selfie man, selfie picture, picture. They just wanted pictures next to us so they could show their friends, like, look who I ran into. I was someone from US. And
I'm having complicated feelings about that. Like
I know.
colonizer stuff is coming to mind, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how to feel about it.
Oh, I know.
I didn't know how to feel about it when people came up and wanted pictures with me. Like I was happy to do it, and I always took pictures back too, because I
Mhm.
like I don't know. These people were excited to meet someone from not in their country. I'm excited to meet someone from in this country. So I was like, okay, let's take pictures of each other. I love it. But yeah, it's like kind of complicated feelings outside of that.
It's a little convoluted, isn't it? Because there were so many times I asked to get pictures with some of the locals, like these incredible looking, like tribal people. Like we're
Oh
talking
yeah.
don't even speak Tamil or any of the other main languages. The ones that are like away from society in the middle of like further into the jungle even than Suman's family. Um,
Yeah, I remember meeting some of the girls from the tribal school.
that one woman we met, I think it was in North India actually. She just looked beautiful. She had like the jewel on her nose, this long stick, and she was just herding goats. And she just it
Yeah.
was a surreal, incredible image. And yeah, we did ask to take a picture, and she kind of felt shy too. She's like, "Why do you want my picture?" I'm like, "Well, we don't come across people like you very much." And so I thought that was a beautiful moment. Like, let's just exchange photos, okay?
Well, and because your husband was there, he was able to explain everything, and so people knew we weren't like trying to be rude or anything. And they seemed like they actually really liked meeting us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Liked meeting
I don't
them.
know.
It's
It's
nice.
complicated, but what can you do but try to be a kind human in the world and be excited to meet other humans? Because, I mean, like, we only get one experience, we only get one life, and the only other way we have other experiences or know more about the world is by getting to hear the cool stories of how other people have lived,
Yeah.
like getting to meet that goat herder woman. And she's so tiny. We have a picture of her next to me. Like, she's just this tiny little person. But like that was so incredible just to to meet her and just think about what her life has been like. To
Mm-hmm.
realize like she's probably spent her whole life kind of on that mountain and walking those, ancient palace ruins with her goats up and down wherever she goes. And like, while I've been doing the life I've done over in the US, like it's just so incredible to like think about all these lives that all these humans have been living. I don't know.
It's for real. It
I
really
really
is.
love humans, and they're awful. So, but it's okay. They're amazing and awful.
Yeah, I suppose every aspect of life has to have, yeah, the ups and downs. But in this case, I'm still blown away. I can't believe there are people out there that don't take an interest in things like learning about our history and other cultures of the world, because I have such a passion for it. Like my face just lights up when I talk about to be like someone from this place. Like if I'm
Hmm.
meeting a group of people, I will like zero in on like the most foreign person I can and be like, "Oh, what country are you from? Okay, let's talk about your culture." I'm that person. Whereas,
Awesome.
yeah, and that is not to say that I don't like love and appreciate where I am from as well. And I think that's a common misconception. I love living in the US, but you know what? I don't think it's the place. I think it's the person. I could be happy living anywhere as long as my basic human rights are not being taken away from. And I think that goes for us
Damn.
as well. Yeah.
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 Yes. Right. There's not one right way or place or whatever. It's
Right.
having our rights. So our autonomy. It's kind of a thing we like talking about.
Autonomy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a big fucking deal.
it is a big fucking deal. Let me just see what
And
else.
I see you as having reclaimed a whole bunch of your autonomy through writing this book.
Yes, Pat. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's really beautiful and about fucking time
Thank
because you
you.
had a whole lot of autonomy taken from you,
Yes, and I didn't realize just how much either.
right?
So I would say I reclaim my life in this. This Scaith is my is the life maybe I should have had. But you ever notice that sometimes people that have the most trauma and damage in their life can create the most beautiful art because of that darkness inside them trying to get out. Like it's like there's a reason that tragedy that in historical times we have tragedies that were so popular. It was almost like people fed um off of drama and problems and people dying, people getting hurt.
Well, isn't some of that keeping the context of reality?
Well, right. Yes, nobody wants to would anyone want to watch a TV show where there's no problems in people's lives? Like they're just happy all the time and there's nothing that they have to overcome. There's no arch nemesis or antagonist, nothing. You wouldn't watch it, right? There has to be sexual scandal. There has to be like an outcome that says, "Hey, I overcame that thing and got here."
I think you're alluding to a thing that I say about us as humans, the idea that we actually need some pressure on us.
Mhm.
Like if things are too easy, it's not good. We go mushy. We just would kind of like be oozy and shapeless without a little pressure. Okay, so random, but so on point for us
Oh my god.
is the that fish. Was it the blob fish? That it's like a deep ocean fish. No, listen, listen. So every time we had seen the blobfish, it was just this like bleh, like this, like a big
Yep.
mush pile, right? And that's what we thought it was. But what was realized is because of where it normally lives, the water pressure is figured into how it survives, right? Like we're
Mhm.
configured for air pressure and whatever. So the underwater in its deep, deep ocean, the blobfish looks like a fish and isn't a blob because it's got the pressure. So we need that. Right? If life would be too easy, like the blobfish is used to all that pressure. So it got put in a situation where it's too easy. Above water, there's not all that pressure and it just went blah, right? Same thing for us. Right? Like our shape is determined by the pressure on us. But we
Right.
kind of need that pressure or we're just a big pile of mush. But right, it's that whole thing of like we can't be guaranteed that we have the right pressure to keep a shape that's good for us. So we like need each other to help keep our pressures where they belong so that we can be our best self. Not too mushy
Patty,
and not smooshed.
that was an epic analogy right there.
Mmm,
Fuck yeah.
blobfish for the win. I just made blobfish preach.
Yeah, I'm glad you can add humor in a space that can sometimes be really dark and depressing. That's I guess in a way I did that in my book too, where I used a lot of humor in places. A humorous side that I didn't even realize I had. Because I never thought I was necessarily funny. But then when I started just behaving the way I normally behave without censorship, I kind of made myself laugh. And I'm like, hey, if nobody else laughs, fine, whatever.
That's
But
fine.
I'm going to throw humor in there. And so,
You know, I've noticed throughout our conversation today, you have a couple of times mentioned something that came out in your writing that you didn't even realize was there or you saw once you wrote it.
yep.
And I just have to recognize that how amazing the human brain is and the fact that the way we process things is so different when it comes to things that are either verbalized or written down, just because of how things have to travel through our brain. Like, it's actually true that by taking something that just exists as feelings and random thoughts in your head and translating it into the written word might actually draw out things that you didn't realize were there because those thoughts are being routed through
Right.
different language centers. I
Mhm.
mean, right? It's like words make the world. So when you give words to it, all of a sudden there are things that materialize that you didn't see.
Right. And I think that might be why sometimes people squash things like creative works. I remember Herbert W. Armstrong, because I read his autobiography when I was studying up for that timeline history on the church that we had done in our 6-part series. And he made this nasty little comment saying that people who write novels are just lazy. It's lazy writing. Because, he was all about the business and marketing and nonfiction, whatever the fuck he was promoting. But yeah, he was really downplaying and criticizing people who do works like that. And I think it's kind of interesting in order for me to heal from the traumas that disgusting man's ideologies, were placed on me.
Inflicted on you.
Yes,
Yeah.
I wrote a fucking novel. It was not lazy by any means. In fact,
No.
it had the opposite effect. So, fuck you, Armstrong.
I think you're onto something here because I think that people who feel free enough to create freely, not within like I'm going to create church art box, but who are actually creative, I think we undo so much bullshit and conditioning. Like I think we can see through it when we are free to create. So
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
either cordon off how that creativity can happen or to stop it altogether is one of the measures of control. I don't remember from our series on the wheel of power and control which one that might be, um, but certainly I can see how that would figure in. All right. Well, Miss Anna Siduri. It was really lovely to have you join us as you talk to us about your book, Vellakari. And it'll be great for all of our listeners to be here at our next episode when Nancy's back to do the interviews. So that'll be great.
Thanks for having
um,
me on your channel, Patti.
yeah. So in the meantime, do you want to tell all of our listeners where they can find your book and where they can find more about you, the author?
Yes. Well, I don't have too much on social media as far as actual authorship goes, but you can email me at annasiduri@gmail.com for anyone who is curious more about the book. I'm happy to answer any questions. You can purchase the book directly in Amazon. We'll have the link in the description down below. So the holiday season's coming up. So if you're looking to maybe, someone likes to read books, or if you want to get it for yourself, I thought this was really good timing. I'm not necessarily out here trying to promote it, but hey, if someone is curious about my book, please, read it. I would love your feedback. Every artist welcomes feedback. So thank you for checking it out.
So, and then to that end, do you have any projects in the works that people can look forward to?
I am writing the second parter of this book. I'm planning to turn it into a trilogy. Again, I kind of left this book open-ended, meaning it could have potentially just ended there and just have it be, a standalone story. But I decided to continue on because I did have some ideas for the second one, which will be pure fiction. This time it's not really going to be religious trauma coming out. It's going to be, more to the story. It's in the works. I've written about 6 chapters now, and I really like where it's going. So we might be seeing a trilogy here at some point where Scaith is going to more countries. She's going to have more issues going on, more drama in her life. Keeps battering her in the face. We'll see where she goes. But other than that, I'm not really in any particular rush. If I'm feeling inspired to work on it, I do, but it's just kind of slowly in the works right now. So, yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, I know I'll be looking forward to that, and hopefully I get a sister sneak peek at some point.
You'll have a first look at it, Patti, being my sister. You helped me with the first one, so now you got to help me with the second one.
You got it. You got it.
Shout out to everyone who inspired characters in my book, because there were a lot of real life, incredible people in my life that inspired characters in the book. I had a lot of fun putting this together, so I hope to continue it into a trilogy. We'll see what people think. Go pursue your own artistic endeavors.
That's right. Don't hold back. Be free and creative. Woohoo! Thanks everybody for joining us with this very special talk with author Anna Siduri.
Thanks everyone. Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Bye. Love you, pets.
I love you too, Nancy.
I think you meant to do this.